Hi everyone, it's Kim from the Shamrock Quilt Studio. Today we're working on our next block from the Barn Star Sampler book, and this one is called Tulip Star. It's the third block that we're making to go along with our large block, Diamond Star, so I hope you'll join us for a little bit of a different show today. And it's block 5 in the book, Northern Star. And we're going to use our fabrics that we've chosen to continue this theme, and we're going to get started on it right after this. And welcome back to the Shamrock Quilt Studio. Well, welcome back everyone. Today we're working on the Tulip Star, and we're going to do something a little bit different. Normally you see my work table here is all cleaned off, and I've got a very direct path that we're going to go through to get to the star. But what I wanted to talk about today is the reality of what your sewing room would look like and how you might have to tackle this project a little differently. I know for me, I'm filming this in early April. The weather is warming up, my garden is turning green, and I need to spend a little more time there and somehow make this a little bit more efficient so I can work on these projects as well. Call that work-life balance if you might, or just life balance. So I want to talk about a little technique that might be helpful for you and for me in getting more done. Now we have busy days, but most of the time we can squeeze out 15 to 30 minutes in that day to make some progress towards a bigger goal. And I'm going to call this intermittent sewing, just like intermittent fasting. So what I am doing here is I'm going to process my sewing in this show in a way that you can see how you can put it into exercise in your sewing. So I've got a bunch of different pieces for this block, and what I need to do is make some progress in my sewing. So instead of doing one little piece and then one little piece and one little piece to put together one section, I'm trying to do little pieces together to make it come together faster, but to be able to sit down and make more progress in that little 15 to 20, maybe 30-minute time frame. So what I'm doing is batch sewing, and we're doing some chain stitching. And like I said, I'm calling this intermittent sewing because you're doing a lot of stuff in a little bit of time and then leaving it and coming back and doing that again. So right now we're working on this part of the block in the corner. And it's much like a log cabin. And I've started out with this little blue square here. I've added this little white square, a white triangle, and now I've added a blue triangle. And the next piece that goes on that is another piece. It's a blue rectangle, and it's going to go on right here. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to take just a minute. I've got 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9 that I need to put together. Now that's not all that I'm going to need for all the blocks. I have a few set aside that I'm going to demonstrate next week of how to put the block together. But for today, we're working on these extra pieces. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to position these together so that I can lay them out. And sometimes this can be the trickiest part, because if you get them wrong, you get them all wrong. So we're just going to take a minute. And I'll tell you what I'm going to do. I'm going to set my timer for 25 minutes. And then that will allow me a little bit of time for ironing and just for the filming things that we're doing, so that you could probably put this into 15-20 minutes of real-time sewing especially if you wanted to do it in smaller time frames and then break for ironing. So I'm setting my timer for 15 minutes during this filming. We'll see how that goes. All right, so I'm putting these together, making sure that I'm lining them all up the same way. And I'm roughly getting the edge of the fabrics in place. You may have to adjust them slightly when you pick them up to put them on the sewing machine. See, I got that one twisted there. And this is not a race so much. This is just a way to efficiently go about something. I do this a lot even in my work and in home task, business task, personal task. It's the same concept of running all your errands at the same time or getting all your groceries at the same time. Okay, that's an extra piece. We're going to leave that. So we've got 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9. I think we have 9. And there we go. Now we're going to set our machine up with the 1/4 inch seam, and we're going to use our little 1/4 inch foot with the seam guide. Make sure we're tight. We're going to put our seam length at 2.4, and we're going to start sewing. And what makes this efficient is that you don't have to stop and start between sewing individual pieces. We're just going to put one in right after the other. Going to check, make sure. That our fabric is lined up. Okay, so that was about 4 minutes and we got all 9 pieces put together. That's the benefit of doing it this way. And I don't have a regular pair of scissors with me. They're both on the ironing board. But very quickly we have that coming together. Now, from here, we could either choose to go to the ironing board and iron those in place, or press them, I should say, or we could move on to a different kind of stitching. That's what I'm going to do right now. I'm going to quickly change feet because that was the last stitching I have right now that uses a straight edge of fabric seam, and now we need to move to a diagonal seam. And we have all of these that need to have it sewn on. Now it's a little tricky with these about what direction that seam goes in, so I'm going to check really quickly my book. And the little one sews like this. And for this, it's the edge of the fabric. So we're going to get a little scrap. We've still got the machine on 2.4, but we have changed it to stitch in the middle now. And we're going to sew right from here to here. And we could do that by lining up. I have a little red dot right where the needle goes in. It's painted on the presser foot. And I can line these up one after the other just by lifting that presser foot just lightly. I think I was just thinking to myself that, you know, we sew flying geese. I think this one is a flying goose because it's just one edge that gets that treatment. I don't sew these quite as fast either. Okay, this is looks like we have one more that came apart or never got matched up. I'll do that one real quick. Okay, so that's all done. That probably should have been about, oh geez, I don't know, because we would have had a bunch of those. Now we've got the longer green strip because this particular section of the block is like a, a log cabin. So we have the other side of the block, which is a little bit longer piece. Whoops, I do not like that when that happens. Okay, that's a place where the thread got caught in and drew up the fabric, kind of like a bird's nest. I could take time to fix it now, or I can keep sewing using my allotted time best I can, and that's what I'm going to do. This one is sewn in the opposite direction. And that does mean that that does have the propensity to happen a little more frequently than I would like. And I found that the best way, once it finally sinks into my brain that it's happening, is once it catches onto the fabric, I grab a hold of the last one and just keep it snug, and that will pull that fabric just enough that the feed dogs will catch it. And that's how we keep moving. Because we're in the sew phase right now. That's what makes this intermittent sewing faster. We don't stop to change task, or the changes are very insignificant. We are working through these pretty quickly. Okay, those are done. So let's see how many we have here. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9. We're still in the big ones. 10, 11, 12. Okay, so I think at 12 we swap over, so we should have 12 of those as well. 2, 3, and look how that worked out. 12 of each of those. So in just, let's see, 14 minutes time, we sewed 9 of these, 12 of the short ones, and 12 of the long ones. Now I do have 2 that I'm going to either have to press really well. Now see, there's one of them. Pressing will work with that one. The other one was a little bit worse. It may need to be picked out on the very end and restitched. But we've got a lot done, and that's very little time. That's about 15 minutes. So now what I'm going to do is take them all to the ironing board and press them really quickly, and then I'll probably trim them, and that will be my sewing time for this little intermittent sewing. And I got a lot done. I didn't get anything finished. That's not the point of intermittent sewing. Intermittent sewing is about doing portions of your sewing in the most efficient way, so that if you don't have 2 hours to sit down and sew, or you don't have an afternoon to sew, maybe you're sewing while the baby's taking a nap, or maybe you're sewing while your roast is in the crock pot, or maybe you're sewing while your child takes a piano lesson, or any type of situation that's a short period of time that you can do something different. You don't have to watch it, but you do need to be nearby. I hope this helps you in your technique a bit. Next week we'll be back to this block and we will get it completed thanks to intermittent sewing. We'll see you next time at the Shamrock Quilt Studio.